gonna give nobody none of my jelly rolls. I wouldn't give you a piece of this cake to save your soul. My mom told me today, before she went away, to be a good boy, she'd bring me a toy. I'm my mama's pride and joy. Now there ain't no use for you to keep on hanging round. I love you, but I've got to let you down.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Castálio Podcast. I'm Og Maciel from Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
Hi, I am Bruno Rocha, speaking from Guarulhos, São Paulo.
And I'm Eliezer Rezende from Pouso Alegre, Minas Gerais.
But our guest for today's episode calls himself a complete Python nut. He likes to cook vegetarian food. He's the author of an amazing book called Python Tricks. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well. He just recently took over the mentorship for the site pep8.org. He has a ton of great videos on YouTube, and we include a link on the show notes for you guys to check it out. And as if this wasn't enough, he started a brand new project called Pythonista Café. It is with great pleasure that we welcome Dan Bader to this podcast. How's it going, Dan?
Hey, it's going great. Thanks so much for the kind words and the nice intro.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
I guess before we start drilling you with all the questions that we have here in our script, I wanted to share some good news with all of our listeners. For this episode, we have a very nice giveaway courtesy of our guest, Dan Bader. And throughout the entire episode and throughout the entire week, I'm going to be sharing a link to a Google form. And it's a link to a Google form where you can all participate for a chance to win a free copy of his ebook, Python Tricks. So all you have to do is click on that link, open that form, answer a very simple question. And by next Wednesday, we're going to randomly pick 3 winners. And then it's going to send you, or we will be sending you all the information on how you can get a copy of his Python Trick books. And I guess now it's probably a good time for us to start with the drilling. So Bruno, take it away.
Okay, so let's get started with the very, very difficult questions we have for you. So the first one is, I want to know, how did you get started with IT and computers in general? How was your first connection with computers? Tell us your story.
Right. Okay. So yeah, not starting. This is a tough question. Like, because it's been, such a long time ago. The first computer I ever owned was this, Commodore 64, C64 that I got either from some yard sale or I don't know, finally convinced my parents to buy that machine. And I was just, mesmerized by it. Like, obviously I didn't know what I was doing there. And I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, I think. And it was just this crazy, ugly little brown machine that had a keyboard built into the case, right? So it wasn't like a separate desktop kind of system, but it was just, this thing, you plugged it into your screen and you had 80 by 20 characters or something on this little terminal, and it booted right into BASIC. And, at the time I grew up and was born in Germany, so I didn't even speak English. And so it was just this crazy little box that you could turn on and type stuff into it and stuff would happen. And that was the first computer I ever owned. And I guess it all went downhill after that.
Cool. And how did you get started with Python?
How did I get started with Python? I think the first real, substantial application that I wrote was for my bachelor's thesis, I think. But I got into Python maybe 2 years earlier than that on a ski trip, actually, where my roommate at the time, he was learning Python also for some university project, I think. And so he had this little booklet, some kind of learn Python in 48 hours or something crazy like that. That never really works out that way. And it might have been a German book too. I don't really remember. And, I had some downtime there, in between skiing and drinking and whatnot. And so I just, took a look at this book and I was like, man, this is really beautiful. This is pseudo code that you can actually run. And I didn't have a computer with me, and nobody really brought a laptop and stuff, so I couldn't really geek out on it immediately, and no internet, so it was hard to do research. But I kind of put it on my mental to-do list, and then after I got back, I just kind of started playing with this language and loved it. Like immediately, like loved the way it looked, and just really liked. I just really like how good clean Python code looks like. Like for me, programming has always been sort of a mixture between, an engineering discipline and an art form. And I know it's easy to sound pretentious saying that, but I think it's really true. Like a beautiful program can be as beautiful as a beautiful poem, I think. And with Python, it's easier, I think, to get to that sweet spot, I think. And so immediately fell in love with Python, and then started digging into it and learning more about it, getting better at it, using it for more projects.
Nice. So we just got a question here from the chat. So Welton Vaz is asking you, what do you like most in the Python language? I think this is a good timing for that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the generators are a pretty fantastic feature in Python. So I'm kind of torn between either list comprehensions or generators. So if you don't know what the generators are, they're basically like syntactic sugar for the iterator protocol. So it's a really nice and concise way to program these algorithms, right, that would otherwise take you a lot of object-oriented, like shuffling around, defining a bunch of classes, defining a bunch of like just foundational structure to get that running. And with generators and generator expressions, you can do that very quickly and succinctly. And I think it is really beautiful, it's really powerful, and often leads to better programs. And like I said, I'm kind of torn between that or list comprehensions. And I can kind of mix it all up together a little bit with the generator expressions as well. But I think the list comprehensions, and I think they're stolen from Haskell or something, are like a really beautiful way also to just describe these mappings and these transformations. And I think that is a pretty unique feature in Python. I mean, now more and more languages are adapting that, but I just always thought that was really cool. Like the first time I wrapped my head around that, I was like, oh man, this changes everything, right? This is going to make my code so much better. And so, yeah, that's probably those are my two favorite features. They're probably on par.
Great answer. All right, I guess now it's my turn. And for those who are still listening out there and don't know who Dan Bader is, he has done many, many amazing things. But the thing that really, the way that I actually learned about him was his book. So Eliezer, we were talking here, the behind the scenes right before we started the broadcast. We were talking about how Eliezer came across a post of his on his Twitter timeline, and he ended up buying his book, Python Tricks, and then I ended up getting my own copy of that. So my question is going to be around this book, right? So what led you to write this book, Python Tricks?
So what led me down the path of writing Python Tricks? So I guess when I'm thinking back, like initially I wanted to be a journalist. And thankfully, I didn't become one because I probably would have been a terrible journalist. And instead, I went into computer science and got like a computer science degree. And then, now I work as a software engineer. But I was always very interested in writing, and I kind of started, getting my feet wet. Like for a long time, I had been kind of doing this journaling challenge where I've been just, trying to write 500 words every single day, like after I got up in the morning, and trying to like explain things in writing. And in the beginning, I was terrible at it, right? Like I said, like English isn't my native language, and obviously like I was struggling with a lot of things, and it was like a very slow process. And I had, just felt like I wasn't good at it, but I wanted to become better at it. And because I was enjoying it, even though I wasn't very good at it. And back then, I wasn't really writing about programming, like just kind of, I guess, like trying to get the basic like mechanics going and get the routine going. And so I'd been dabbling into writing for a long time. And then never really combined that with programming, or, I guess what I knew about programming. But then eventually I realized the power of it as a teaching tool. Like I had been, at that time, I'd been working at a couple of companies doing software engineering work, then, had like run teams and stuff. And I just realized, okay, you need to have a scalable way to get your ideas out there. It's super important, right? Like it's important for everything. Like if you can write like a good email, if you can write like a nice email, then you're going to have more impact in your organization. You're going to have more impact on the world. Like everyone is on the internet now. Everyone is connected, and you can have a great impact on the engineers in your department or in your team or in your company if you can teach them stuff efficiently at scale. And so, this is where we finally like make the jump to that book. And I'd been running this Python blog and, just blogging about Python since 2012 and other programming topics. And I thought maybe, just maybe I'm ready to try and do a self-published book. Like probably no one's going to buy it. Like it's going to be terrible, but I would just love to do it, because for my love of writing. And then also because I had realized that it was a really powerful tool for more, making the world a better place, if you want, in some sense, giving back to the Python community. And so I started putting together a few chapters, and I still remember it was like, I think some Sunday night or something where I hit the big red button, published like a landing page for the book with a buy button where people could get the book for, I think, $1 initially, or 99 cents or something. And I was like, yeah, okay, no one is going to buy that. Like, why would you? And initially, no one did, of course, right? And so I kept like tweeting it, like kept, kind of asking people, hey, what do you think about this book? And I was like, hey, I don't really get what this book is even about. Like, so I tried to improve, kind of the premise and just kind of, it was a very organic process in writing this book and actually finding out what the book should be about. And so that's how it all began. And I think initially it wasn't really a book. It was just like an intro. And I didn't really know what I was doing. But then I found, like, over iterations, and several of them, I found that people really liked this Python Tricks series that I was doing. So Python Tricks is like a free series with code examples that people get in their email inbox. So if you go to my website at debater.org, you can just punch in your email address, and I'll send you one of these Python snippets like every couple of days. And the idea is that it's just a code example with some comments in there, and you're going to learn a little bit more about Python, like every other day that way, right? It's just a little example. And people love that. And so it's like, man, like maybe I could bring some of that magic over and actually turn it into a book. Because really, if you only have like 5 lines of example code, you can do some fun stuff, like show some little tricks and stuff. But it's really not like a comprehensive education that someone gets from that, right? And so I combined that, and it seems to resonate with people. And, it's been growing, and now I sell like a bunch of copies every week. And it's been great. I love it.
That's pretty cool. And I don't know if you've seen it, but like in the chat, I see that a lot of people are talking about the book, saying how Python Tricks rocks. Like Tiago Cordero just said it right there. So it does sound like, word of mouth. Your book is getting to become very well known, I guess, around the Python community, which is pretty cool. I have a follow-up question for you, which is, you started the book based on basically, I actually subscribe to your Python Tricks, so I do get the emails. I really look forward to them. I really enjoy reading it. And I see how you could get immediate feedback, I guess, immediate satisfaction by using, social network and stuff like that, right? Because you post something on Twitter, you almost immediately will get some kind of feedback, hopefully positive, but you will get, immediate reaction to it. Do you still get the same type of feedback now that you have a book? Do you get more feedback or less feedback? Have you noticed any difference?
So that's a really good question, because I think, getting this feedback, that is something very unique that has only become possible over the last couple of years. Like if you're writing a book, I mean, if you can self-publish that, like I think everyone could do that as long as you put in the time, and you start a Twitter account and start tweeting it out, or have a blog, and you start getting feedback. I would say that okay, so it's probably going to be like a bit of a like long-winded answer, so feel free to jump in and like interrupt me there. I definitely get more feedback now, just because it's had a wider reach, and I think my website has a wider reach now. Like I started this YouTube channel with like free Python tutorials that I just create and like post every week, and so I get more people that are exposed to the book, or like the sample chapters, and everything around that. And so I would say overall I get more feedback. Interestingly enough, it seems to be less critical than the feedback that I got in the beginning. So it is man, like how can I say this? Like it is so terrible sometimes what we do to each other, right? Like if someone is starting a creative endeavor, and I've been in my past, like I had times in my life where I was like a pretty negative and like, I guess like cynical person, right? And I really want to root that out. And I think I'm on a good path like these days, but so I get it when someone has that knee-jerk reaction where, someone posts like, hey, I made this book and like, here's a free chapter, and someone like emails you and they're like, oh, you did that wrong. And this is not bad. And like, oh, actually there's a typo. Like, who do you think you are? You can't just make a book. And that was really beating me down initially. Obviously like in sort of the rational part of my brain, I realized, okay, people are just reacting that way. I lived and studied with computer scientists. I am one myself, so I get, how a lot of us sometimes get this just as a knee-jerk reaction. Something is not optimal or something is not perfect. Something is not, is not 100% accurate, and that triggers something. I mean, if you check out like Hacker News or some Reddit discussions, you know exactly what I mean, right? Where people get these like really aggressive, like have these really aggressive online personas. And so that has really changed over time for me, because now I'm 99% is like constructive feedback. And obviously I've been through so many iterations with feedback and making the book better and, releasing another version of it, because I'm not bound to that publisher model. I can just push out a new version, every week if I want. And I've done that for a while, and I can just fix these things and make them better, make them better, make them better. And so that really has changed the nature of that feedback. Now I have like a little bug tracker that maybe I should actually make that public, where I track these things and I try to fix them, as soon as possible, because I'm actually doing this full time. This Python training thing. And so that has really changed the nature of the feedback that I received. And I think also my perspective on this feedback has changed, because, now I realize that a lot of times if people give you negative feedback on something that you share with the world, then you got to take it the right way, right? And you got to make sure it doesn't demotivate you, because it's so easy to put yourself out there and just get shut down by some jerk, someone who didn't have a good day. And it's even if it's like a 100-to-1 ratio of positive and negative comments, like it still has an impact. And especially if someone is very early on in that journey, also as a programmer, like some people get told like, oh, you're never going to be a good programmer, like you're never going to be good at math, like you're never going to be good at English or whatever. And it doesn't help anyone. I really hate that mindset. Like absolutely, it is terrible. And I think in our industry, if we can do anything to kind of shift to a more positive and optimistic mindset, a more supportive mindset, it would be great. And I want to also point out that the Python community is already doing really awesome. Like I always felt really at home at the Python conferences and everything. And so I'm sure that also has an impact, where it's just people in general are more, I guess, like uplifting and, have a little bit more humor and maybe are just a little bit more easygoing in that respect. So I love Python. And I love the Python community.
I support your opinion. I think Python community is one of the best communities, and we are always have positive people and people willing to teach and learn, and that's very nice. But I have another question about your book. And I personally got a copy of your book from Augie, but I didn't read your book yet. But I follow your blog and your mailing list, your newsletter, and I every day when I get that newsletter, I go there and I read your texts and also your code tricks. I think it's very, very nice, very cool the way you put some small drops of information on a daily or weekly basis that really works. But now, as I didn't read your book, I have a question about it. There are so many Python books, so many good Python books available. And then I want to ask you, what sets your book apart from other books? Or in other words, why yet another Python book? Or try to sell your book for me. Try to sell your book for community. Yeah.
Well, you already got it, right? So it'll be easy. No, that's a great question, because it's a super valid question. Like, and it's a very it's a question that I actually receive from people, right? And I guess like we could all say like, oh, we have the Python reference documentation. Like, heck, we have the Python, like the C Python source code. Why do we need books for? Like, couldn't we just all read the source code and kind of infer logically what the perfect solution to every programming problem is there? But I think how people learn, this is going to go a little bit into my like learning or I guess teaching philosophy. I think how people actually learn is very different to how they're often taught. And I noticed that in my university education, or I guess like the equivalent of high school back then in Germany, where there's this disconnect where I think there are two ingredients, for someone to learn something new and kind of be able to apply that knowledge, and that are often missing. And so this is something that I'm aiming at with the book. And so I guess what these ingredients are is that I think people, like every one of us has this like knowledge map in their brain, right? Where it's like, okay, we have, we know we can only learn stuff by analogy. So if it's like you want to learn a programming language like Python, okay, if you already know C and Java, then that's great, because then there are going to be very many connections you can make there. And it's going to be unique for every single person, right? Like someone who has never used Python before, doesn't know anything about programming, they're going to need very different analogies and very different connections there to be able to learn effectively. So I think that's one ingredient. And the other ingredient is that, for me at least, like learning really comes down to having someone that you like to learn from. And, I realized that when I was trying to get better at playing the guitar, and I went through a couple of teachers and then finally found someone that really resonated with, I still suck at it. That's the end of the story, I guess. But I finally found someone that I really resonated with and that I enjoyed learning from them. And they were just thinking in a way that was like very closely connected to the way I was thinking. And so I was able to make these connections much more faster and learn new stuff quicker. And so that is why I think on any topic out there in the world, it would be possible to write a new book and actually find an audience. Maybe the third ingredient is now that we're all connected over the internet, and I can send you a copy of my book in like 10 seconds, and you can read it on your computer or your tablet. And because for everyone, this knowledge map is going to be different, and for everyone, it's going to be a different teacher personality that they would like to learn from. And so that is the niche that I saw, or that I think I think this is real. I mean, this is why I'm saying it, and this is why I'm doing it, and this is why I think there was a niche for Python tricks to exist, because I was trying to teach things, by analogy, and do it in a bite-sized way, and do it in a way that is sometimes a little bit more story-driven. So, for example, one of the first chapters is where we're talking about what the difference is between the is operator, like the is, the English word is, and the equals operator, because they seem almost identical if it's like if you're new to Python. And so I'm telling the story of, how I grew up, and there were these like two twin cats that my neighbors had, and they looked completely identical, but obviously they were not, the same cat. Like, I guess they were like, maybe they were genetic clones, but they were like two different entities, right? And so I go into this little story and use that to explain the difference between identity and equality and how it maps to Python. And you could, I know maybe some of you guys listening to this are thinking, okay, this is crazy. Like, this is a bunch of like woo-woo crazy stuff here. But with some people, it really resonates. And I think that's all what it comes down to, right? Like I have this sort of encouragement inbox in my Gmail folder where I, tag stuff where someone sends me feedback, and when I feel down, I can just go there and kind of be like, oh yeah, that one person liked my book. It feels great. And so this one person from Australia emailed me, and he said, I've been trying to teach my daughter Python. And with the story, she knows the difference now between is and equals. And if you go around and ask a bunch of Python developers, on the street, pretty sure not all of them would know the difference. So it's like, oh yeah, that, it works. And it's not going to work for everyone. Might not even work for the majority of people, but that's sort of the angle the book is written from.
Did he sell you, Bruno? Are you gonna buy his book now, or what?
Yeah, absolutely. I already have the book, but I get it to read today. I read more.
Awesome. Yeah, let me know what you think. Really interesting.
Nice.
You can get a refund if you don't like it.
Okay, cool. So you said you were able to release weekly your book in the early stages. So what tools do you use to write your books? And also, I think in addition to that, maybe you can mention what kind of system that allows you to publish and do that way.
For sure, yeah. So for generating the book, like basically I have this, build process, a bunch of scripts, and the core ingredient there is a tool called Pandoc, where you can feed in several different documentation formats. So I use Markdown. I really like Markdown. I use it on my blog. Excuse me. Use it on my blog. I use it for most of my writing, and also for a book, of course. And so you feed in Markdown files. So if you don't know what Markdown is, it's basically a plain text plain text format that has some like very simple very simple syntax for like highlighting words and adding headlines and stuff like that. And Pandoc parses that out, generates a LaTeX file, and that gets compiled into PDF. It gets compiled into EPUB. It gets compiled, and the EPUB gets compiled into a Kindle book. So I've got this whole like build chain there. And the nice thing about EPUBs is that you can ship a style sheet. So you can actually influence how this is rendered on, an EPUB reader, like the modern Kindles or, most like tablets, or even if you would read that on your computer. And with the PDF, you can do something similar where you basically have to do a bunch of LaTeX programming, which is not that much fun because it's a pretty horrible programming language, but a fantastic like documentation generating system, and so, or I guess like typesetting system. And so that gives me a lot of control over what the book looks like. And I wanted to have, nice looking fonts. I wanted to have like just nice typography. And I wanted to have nice code examples with proper syntax highlighting and, Python 3 support. And so I spent a bunch of time getting that to work smoothly. So now it's like, I have like a make file that I run, and all the content goes in. At the end, all the different formats come out, all the sample chapters come out, and it adds like a cover and everything, and then I'm done. So now it's like a pretty sweet setup, but it took a while to get there. However, there is services that do that for you. I think one that I remember is called Readsy. Another one is LeanPub, and they have pretty decent outputs. I would probably encourage someone just trying to get their feet wet to do that. Like the first version of the book, I used a tool called Ulysses for Mac and just exported a PDF file. And it didn't look that great, but it's a good way to test the waters and see, if you can do it, if you enjoy it, and you don't have to invest into a bunch of setup and like build chain building. But yeah, that's what I use. And then for selling the book, I use a platform called Gumroad. You can find that at gumroad.com. It's, I guess, like an online marketplace that also handles the EU VAT system. So like this is actually something that's a little bit complicated if you want to sell stuff online or products online, courses, training, and books. You have to make sure that you're paying the tax, the VAT, the value added tax for your customers in the EU. And this is super painful. Like if I have, let's say I have one person from Germany buying my book every year, I have to pay, like a couple of euros taxes on that to Germany through the German system. And so what Gumroad does is they kind of abstract that away from you. Of course, they charge some money for that, but they abstract that away from you so you can just place a product there and then start selling it, and they will handle the EU VAT and kind of funnel that away, so that goes into the right pockets and whatnot. And so I mainly use it for that reason. And then also it's a delivery platform. So, you can upload your EPUB, you can upload your PDF, and then they will make sure that people get these updates. So now when I build a new version of my book, I'll format the latest chapter in Markdown, get some feedback on it. If I want to ship it, I put it in my GitHub repository. Then, so I do pull requests for the stuff, put it in my GitHub repository, run my make script, and I have like a new folder where all the different output files are in there. So I just drop that into Gumroad, and then they say, hey, I noticed you changed your content. Do you want to send an update out to everyone? And I can also add like a little message. So I'll kind of point out what was changed and just hit, update or send, and it goes out to everyone. And then people can just grab the latest version with a download link they get in their email inbox, or if they use Gumroad's app, then I think they'll get the updates come in automatically. And so it's a relatively, once you've set it up, it's a relatively easy to maintain system. But I would if I were to do it again, hindsight and all, I probably would have just gone with something like LeanPub, because that's also a marketplace where people can find your stuff. I mean, Gumroad is that to a degree, but LeanPub I think has more developers, and then you still get all the you get all the output formats for free. Like I think if I can keep talking about about this question, I think a big danger is, and I almost got sucked into that as well, is that if you're starting a project like that, it's very easy to start optimizing the process and the build process, and like, oh, make sure this gets rendered nicely and the build script is perfect, without actually focusing on what matters, which is the content. So the first like 1 or 2 years where I was running my website, I probably spent more time on like building out my own like framework, and optimizing like my deployment process, and taking it from Heroku to like different platforms and back and forth. And it's very easy to get like lost in it tinkering without ever like actually creating more output that really moves the needle for people. But it's also fun. I mean, honestly, it's a lot of fun to tinker with that stuff. So yeah, do whatever you want, but be careful.
That's good advice for sure. I guess I want to still talk a little bit about this book, Python Tricks, because as I mentioned earlier, I do own a copy, and I do like the fact that every now and then you do send out an update. And I think it was a couple of weeks ago when I got an email notifying me about the update. I noticed that you now included a lot of videos that can go with some of the chapters that are included in your book. But the cool thing about the process, this whole thing, is that all of these videos are available for free on YouTube right now. So even if you do not buy a copy of Python Tricks, and I strongly advise you that if you want to see something really cool, really well done, and learn a couple nice little tricks about Python, I strongly urge you to go and get yourself a copy, or better yet, fill out the form that we have for this podcast, and you have a chance to win a free copy of your own. But anyhow, I noticed that all of those videos are available for free on YouTube, so you don't have to buy a copy. You can go to YouTube, look up Dan Bader on YouTube, and you're going to find his videos there. I would like to know from you, and I got the feeling that I already know what the answer is, but why are you sharing these awesome videos completely free of charge for people just to use? Does it have anything to do with the fact that you want to give back to the community again? Is that what it is?
No, I just want to increase my audience. No, I guess it is really about it is about, well, I guess with these videos, like honestly thinking back why I did that, I felt like I had some really good material on YouTube, and I wanted to do remastered versions of it. And so I took, these videos, like recut them, cut out all of the little bits that say, hey, subscribe to my channel, or like, hey, buy this book, because obviously now you already had the book, and really wanted to make a nice package where someone, could read a chapter in the book and then maybe do a deep dive also watching the video, and just include that as a free bonus essentially with the book. And like what I really believe in is that it's possible. Like the way I want to run my business is that I'm giving away 80 to 90% of the stuff that I create. I'm going to be giving that away for free, because I think it is possible to do that in a sustainable way. Where you can run a sustainable business, and where it actually has benefits for you as well, and obviously for everyone who's watching and consuming the free content. And the way this works, I think, and this took me a while to like really wrap my head around, but now with the internet, you can have just a lot of reach. I mean, it's crazy that we're here now, talking about this stuff, and like some of you are in Brazil, like I'm here in Vancouver, like Og, you're in the States, right? So this is just awesome. And we're all talking about Python. There's many people interested in this stuff, and so if you don't need to capture a lot of that market to basically have a profitable business, or be enough that you can be self-sustaining, and that's why I think it is possible to do it, and that's why I want to do it, right? Because it's like a win-win. I mean, I tried to make this joke initially. It was like, oh yeah, it's just, I only do it because it's good for me. And I mean, like, to a degree, that's also true. But the nice thing, it's good for everyone, right? Because I can give that stuff away for free. And that means someone is going to maybe watch like a couple of these videos that are out there for free on YouTube. And then maybe they're going to check out my website. Maybe they're going to sign up for my email list, and they're going to get a bunch of more free stuff. And then if they like what they're seeing, maybe they buy my book. And if not, that's totally okay. And if they do, that's great, right? And I think that is a more realistic model than saying like having one YouTube video that says, I made a really great book. Like, you should all buy this book. Like, click here and buy the book. Like, buy the book. Enter your credit card details here. I don't think that works very well in the world that we live in today, because also what we touched on earlier, there's so many different, there's like, people want to know what they're getting, and they want to make sure they actually trust the person that they're learning from. And I think this is so it's like a win-win for everybody, right? Like, people who can't afford training, paying for training like that, they get some stuff for free. The people who do, they can get it, and I can make a living off that, and so everybody wins. And yeah, and I think it works. I mean, we're gonna have to see, right? Like, maybe this is not gonna work out for very long, but I think this is a pretty good model that's possible these days.
Cool. Also, speaking about YouTube, in our opinion, your videos are very well put together. I personally like very much your videos, and it's very easy to follow and understand the steps you explain on your videos. It's very, very, very nice. So I have a question. How much time do you dedicate to YouTube, and how much time do you spend preparing the material for YouTube? Do you have a script? How do you do? Do you prepare a script, or you just turn on your camera and start typing and go there? How much time, and how is the process to write the content?
Right. Okay. So it's a little bit hard for me to estimate. Like, maybe I should track my time better, how much time I put every week. Like, another benefit of having multiple channels. So for everyone, who's listening, who's maybe thinking about doing something similar, it's great if you have multiple channels that you use to teach people, or interact with people. For example, for me, it's Twitter, it's my my email newsletter, it's my website, it's YouTube, it's the book and the courses that I create. Right? These are all like separate channels, but they all, to a degree, they feed into each other, or the way there's different material everywhere, but like a lot of times I will start it with a simple idea that is just a Python trick that I tweet out. Like, I just like hammer it into my editor there, take a screenshot and tweet it out like over a cup of coffee in the morning, because it's something just I thought of, or like going for a walk, I was like, hey, this is cool, and I get home and like just tweet it, and then I see a bunch of replies. Like, sometimes people say, this doesn't actually work, or like, usually, I mean, I tried this stuff, right? But someone is like, hey, this doesn't work on like Python 2.7, you should mention that. And so there's a little bit of iteration there, right? And then I can take that and put it into the refined version goes into the email list. And then people will email me and it'll be like, hey, have you thought about this? Or this is really cool. And then this whole time I'm also processing this and thinking about it. And so when the time comes when I do maybe a YouTube video about it, then it takes very little prep work, actually. Like, if I do, I try to do like, I guess, like more structured videos where I have slides and, like graphical, like little animations and stuff. And that takes a lot more work. But like, the baseline for a video is basically me going to a full screen interpreter session, cranking up the font size so it's nice and readable, putting up my little mic here, and then just kind of exploring the topic and talking about it. And that means I have like, let's say I have, 45 minutes, 50 minutes of video. And then that's when the real work starts. And that's when I sit down and I need to cut that out so that's like a coherent piece and not just me like rambling into the microphone for 40 minutes like I'm doing now, right? So this is where the real works. I mean, I'm sure you guys know that with the podcast, right? When you're sitting down, you have all this material, and then you can go crazy and like cut out the little like pauses and the breathing sounds and like I had initially when I did this, I had like a ton of these little vocal tics. like little noises that I would make and stuff. And I was like cutting all of that out, and now it's got like a little bit better, probably still not perfect, but getting better every day. And so it doesn't, it's like super rambly answer again, but like it doesn't actually take, I don't spend like 20 hours a week making these videos. That's what I want to say, right? If that makes sense. But like a lot of times it's maybe like, if I want to do one video, I'd say, including uploading and posting it and stuff, maybe 4 hours. Depends on, some videos are really quick. Some are a little bit longer, but on average, I guess like 4 hours. Yeah. Seems accurate.
Cool. So I think I will stay on the tooling side of this conversation. So what tools do you use for video editing? And it would be great if you could say also about what tools do you use to record as well.
For sure. Yeah. So I have a link that I can share later, because I get this question a lot, and I have like a little like resources link. Like actually, if you search for debater resources or tools or something, you're probably going to find it. Anyway, so in terms of software, I really like an app called ScreenFlow. I think it's available for Windows and Mac, and not Linux, unfortunately. But if you're on one of these platforms, it's a great option. Like this is great. Like this is a recording tool, and then also an editor, and you can use that. You can have these little transitions, like do a crossfade, or, add some intro music. And it's relatively easy to do that. I mean, of course, it's going to take you like a couple of iterations and tries to get it right. And I think a license for that is like $100 or something. So it's, it's not free, but if you're committed, like it's definitely affordable, and they have a free trial. So I would highly recommend that. Another option is called Camtasia. Again, I think it's Windows and Mac only. And that's also an editor. So it's not just a recording tool. I mean, if you just wanted to record stuff, you could, on a Mac, you can do it for free with just a built-in QuickTime app. I think on Windows, you can use something called, what's it called? ODS or OBS, Open Broadcasting Studio. I think that records to disk, and you could just, trim that and then put it on YouTube. And YouTube has a built-in editor you can use to trim the file. So you could use that on, I'm sure there's something, I mean, there's got to be something for that on Linux, but I don't really know a good app.
Yeah, OBS works on Linux. That's the tool I use.
Great.
Is OBS, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, highly recommended. Like probably if that's free, like probably would be my first choice then. Yeah, and in terms of the microphone setup and everything, like right now, we just moved to a new place. Like I'm actually recording this in our bedroom. I'm rocking like a relatively simple setup. So this microphone is called the Samsung Q2U, I believe. And again, I can share that later in the chat. And that's what it's called in Europe and in the States and in Canada, and I guess like all of Northern America. This thing is called the ATR 2100. I'll post it later. I'll look it up for you. But this is like a relatively basic but decent quality mic that just plugs into your USB. And you probably want to get one of these guys, like a little, this is called a pop filter. So what this does is it's like a, it shields it from the wind. So if you make these like P sounds, or, T, like the hard sounds, it's going to make sure that it takes the edge off a little bit, because otherwise you get these like crazy spikes and you go into clipping, and it's going to sound terrible in the final video. So, it's all stuff I had to learn. But you can get that mic for relatively cheap. I think, again, it's like around 50 euro. I think 50 euro, $40 or something. So relatively affordable, and you just want, like a decent headset. And then definitely get a boom. So this guy here. Again, I got that, I just didn't bring that with me from Germany. So I just ordered that here from Amazon. I think I paid like $20 for it. So wherever you are, it should be pretty affordable to get a mic arm like that. And it makes it a little bit easier because you can position that in front of yourself. And I could be typing here on my computer and then record at the same time. Because otherwise it gets a little bit hard. Like if you have to hold on to the microphone, it gets a little bit awkward, and you want to make sure ideally your distance, like your lips to the mic, would be very constant. So you can set the levels right and everything. Like I'm probably like rocking back and forth and stuff. But like if you're recording a video, ideally you'd be very close, and that gives the best result. But yeah, thanks for sharing that link. And yeah, so it's at debater.org/resources. And I think you need the trailing slash, because I wrote my own framework and it doesn't automatically fix that for you. So you need the trailing slash. yeah, so those are the tools that I use at home, or like I guess back in Germany, I have like a more extensive setup, like also some like compressing, like a hardware compressor that makes the sound like sounds a little bit nicer. But honestly, I don't think you need that. Like just get the headphones and start recording stuff. I think it's very easy to get into this. How like I'm a little bit into photography as well, and people talk a lot about GAS, which is gear acquisition syndrome. I'm not sure if you guys have heard that, but it basically means, okay, instead of going out and taking photos, it's very easy to spend all day trying to buy the best camera and like do research on cameras and, can I get a better lens? And I mean, realistically, like any like camera phone we have today is probably like a better camera than what people were, shooting photos like 50 years ago. So just go out and do it, do it on your computer. And like if you go back on my channel and like scroll all the way down, like the first videos I posted were like me talking into the Apple headphones, and it shows, but it doesn't really matter. Like as long as you get started and crank out stuff, then you'll do fine.
Cool. So we got another question here on the chat, and I think we are going to change a little bit the subject here. But Elio have asked you, what do you think about the future of Python? And I think this is a kind of the general question about Python. I don't know if he meant to ask about Python 3, but anyway, feel free to comment about Python 3 or future in Python in general.
Okay, what do I think about the future of Python? Maybe let's start with the Python 3 question, because I think that's easy. I mean, I think Python 3 is going to take over completely, and we're going to have some Python 2 systems around that we're going to unfortunately have to be maintaining for potentially longer. But I think at this point, the scales have already tipped towards Python 3. I mean, the changes that have happened in Python 3 are just so great. Like even, and there's new stuff coming, like in 3.6, the new string formatting syntax, where you can have these like little, what's it called? I forgot the word, but basically, you put a little F at the beginning of a string, and then it's string interpolation. So you can just, and then have expression inside your string, and then the interpreter will figure out what to do there and give you the final result. So it's like a really nice and concise way. And they're adding new stuff like that, with every release and polishing it. And so I think if it hasn't taken over everywhere yet, it's going to do it soon. I mean, I just read, the other week, or I guess at PyCon, there was a presentation about it, how Instagram, which is, it started out as a giant Django app, and I believe it's still a giant Django app, essentially. They migrated from Python 2 to Python 3, and it took them a while to do it, of course, but they did it. And I think, as time goes on, more and more of the like larger code bases are also going to get migrated, because the tooling is going to get better, the type hinting is better, like everything is better. So I would, I think Python 3, it has already won, and now it's just going to take a while for it to be everywhere. And in terms of how Python is doing and will be doing in the future, I see a really bright future for Python, honestly. Like what I think makes Python so great is that it's a full spectrum language, and this is an idea that Michael Kennedy of the Talk Python podcast came up with. Like there's an interview with him on my blog that you can find about the title is, I think, Why Learn Python. And there's a couple of interviews with people, what people are thinking about the future of Python and, where we're going as a programming language. And so Michael had this this term or this phrase where he said, Python is a full spectrum language. That means it spans like a really wide gamut of what you can do with it. It's a great language for new people to learn programming, because it looks like pseudocode and it looks very appealing and people can get into it relatively easily. And then you have the back end of Instagram built on Python. Like Google uses a lot of Python. Like parts of YouTube, I think, are still built in Python. And there's all, the data science community is more and more switching to Python. And I know why, because, R is just a terrible programming language. And it doesn't have the tooling, right? It doesn't have like great linters. It doesn't have the tool support. And so I think Python is going to absorb more and more of that. And as we have more people coming in who are learning Python now, I think I read the other day that in most US universities, Python has replaced Java as the beginning programming language. So that means we're going to have, many people that learn how to use Python, and not all of them are going to be great programmers or great Python programmers, but I think there's going to be a push to leverage, these people and these new programmers. And to, if you have choice and there are great Python programmers around that you can hire, then why not do it, right? Then why not build your tech stack on Python? And so I think, we're at the beginning of this wave that's going to carry on for a relatively long time. I mean, it's always hard to make predictions, right? Like maybe tomorrow, Google AI goes, self-conscious, and we're just all gonna go poof, in a cloud of gray goo or whatever. I don't hope so, but it might happen. It's always hard to make these predictions in tech and whatnot. But I see a really bright future for Python, because there's a lot of momentum. It's growing. PyCon is growing every day. It's just a great community. It takes great care and great pride for making sure it's a diverse community, which again is something where I think Python is at the forefront of making sure there are now there are a bunch of Python, female Python core developers, and if you go to a Python conference, there's always the PyLadies group is there, and I just went to a meetup in Vancouver, to the PyLadies meetup, and it is. I think that's adding a lot of value to the language as well, because it's just making this thing a more human community of people. And I think ultimately that's what we all want, right? If we just wanted to stay in the ivory tower and write assembly code all day, then maybe not so much. I mean, I love assembly code, right? But I think this is a good thing for Python, and I see that in Python more than I see it in many other languages. And for that reason, I think Python is going to do really well over the next couple of years.
Cool. All right, I would like to shift a little bit the topic back to you now. And as someone in the chat, Masu Mendonça, I think it was him. Let me just double check. I believe it was Masu who said something. I just want to make sure that I give proper credit to the person who mentioned it. Yes. Okay. So in the chat, Masu Mendonça was talking about your Sublime course that you have, right? So you actually wrote a series of videos talking about, basically explaining how to take the Sublime text editor and fully configure it for Python development. I actually happened to see the intro video that you have for that series. And even though I am not a Sublime user, I'm an Emacs user, I was sold right away. I wanted to see the whole series. I wanted to see the whole thing just to see how Sublime would be fully configured, because it looked so hot just looking at the intro video that you put together. So tell us about some of the other courses that you have, or training materials that you have developed that you have to offer to the community who may not be aware of them.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the kind words. I really love Sublime Text. I think it's just an awesome editor, and it has a leg up on Atom and all of Visual Studio Code, just in terms of raw performance, because it's this crazy fast rendering engine and scrolls so fast. And I don't want to get into the editor fights and stuff. Vim and Emacs, they're all great. So I'm just gonna shut up here. But yeah, so that's a course that I have. It shows you how to set up Sublime Text from start to finish. Decked out with all the plugins and live code linting and code feedback on your Python code, a really pretty font, or a choice of really pretty fonts, and really nice syntax highlighting, and how to do that from scratch on Windows, Mac, and Linux. So that's one course that I offer. It's the first one that I ever created, and that I've been updating it and stuff. And the other course that I launched not too long ago is about Python dependency management. So the premise of that course, or why I created that course, was that I also do a bunch of one-on-one coaching where people either want to be Python developers, or they want to get better at writing Python, or maybe they're about to get ready for an interview, want to make a career change into Python. And one thing that I saw come up so often was that the question, okay, when am I job ready with my Python skills? And sort of this focus on knowing the core language and maybe knowing, if I know some Python, I know Django, I can get a job. That might be true. Honestly, I mean, it might be true, but I think what's easy to miss is that, like, a lot of times, development work is kind of shaped like an iceberg. You see the tippy top, and it's like, okay, you got to learn the syntax, right? You got to know, like, what's an int, what's a float. And what you don't see is, like, everything that is underneath that actually makes you a productive developer. And that is stuff like running automated tests. How do you write tests in the first place? Like, how do you make sure your code is formatted nicely? How do you package your programs so that you can put them, like, if, let's say, you wrote a web app, how do you get it live? And how can you share it with the world? And how do you document that, right? Like, how do you put something, like, how do you make a project open source? How do you share it with the world? How do you make sure when someone else installs your program, it doesn't just blow up because all of the different versions of the other packages that you used don't match anymore? Then how do you even pick a good package in the first place? Python has this great library of freely available Python packages that you can just use, and modules that you can use in your own programs to be a much more effective coder. But how do you find, how do you identify a great package? And so this course is like a one-stop shop for all of these questions, right? So people are going to learn how to use virtual environments, to have sandbox environments, make sure they're not, like, stepping on their other projects' toes, and they're going to learn a very clear process for finding good Python packages and also documenting those and maybe sharing them with their manager or with their team, really making a case like, hey, this is why we should pull this other dependency in, and this is why we need it. Because I'm sure you guys have heard of the left pad incident that happened there on NPM, like the Node.js package manager. So left pad was like a 10-line library that all it did was, like in Python, it's called zfill. Like, basically pad, you could take a string and then add a bunch of spaces or, like, zeros up front to pad it, to make it a certain length for, like, formatting numbers. And so this tiny library was used in like millions of Node.js projects. And it probably should be something that's just built into the core language, but it isn't, right? So people started pulling in this dependency that was downloaded every time someone installed a project, millions of times. And so what happened was that the developer who wrote that left pad library shut down their account and deleted the library. So all of a sudden, it wasn't available anymore as a dependency. And so, all across the world, automated tests ground to a halt. People couldn't work on their stuff. Like, it was crazy, right? Like, even some newspapers talked about this. And I think it really goes to show that it's easy to make the wrong decision when it comes to these dependencies and, pull in all kinds of stuff that, as developers, we don't even know what it does. And we just kind of, we're just standing on the shoulders of these giants, which is generally good. But a lot of times it would be good to at least know what the giant's face looks like, right? Like, is it a trustworthy giant? And so this course kind of, like, the goal for someone who goes through that course is that they would be able to handle these situations and know how to avoid them. Because I don't think anyone else teaches that, honestly. And I think it's such a huge problem that I see, so many times. And so it's a key part to becoming an efficient developer. And we're not talking about it enough. So yeah, that's what the course does.
Yeah, nice. I will take the opportunity about what you said to say that this week, I'm going to a conference here in Brazil, which is called Caipira. And Caipira is a very different conference. We had some ideas about in our last episode. And my talk will be about that. I will talk about the quality of Python ecosystem, and then I will share the slides later. And then also, I want to say that I hope that Kenneth Hates doesn't do anything with requests in the same way, because we all use requests in the same way people use the left pad on NPM. And some weeks ago, actually, Kenneth made some mistakes, and that was a very interesting thing about requests. So we are all exposed to that kind of problems. So we need to, this is a thing we need to figure out how to get better in Python community. This is a community problem, and we have to fix this. We all have the responsibility to fix it. So, but let's go to the another question I have here. I recently heard about your new project, which is called Pythonista Café, which maybe is a coffee with a Python logo. Are you selling coffee now? But I'm pretty sure it's not about this. And it's described about an invite-only community for developers helping each other. And I want to know more about what is Pythonista Café and what is the main goals of this new project.
For sure. Yeah, I also wanted to say, if you share your slides on this topic we talked about earlier, let me know. I'll be happy to tweet them because I think, we should get the word out. So big thumbs up on that. Okay, so what is Pythonista Café? So like I guess one sentence pitch for it would be to say it's a peer-to-peer learning group for Python developers. And, you might think, okay, there's a bunch of buzzwords. What does that even mean? Are we all going to BitTorrent a bunch of stuff? No, that's not what it's about. But basically, when I started going into consulting, I started working from home, and I lived in an area where there was no meetups. There was no developer community. There was certainly no Python community around me. And it started to feel a little bit lonely, right? Because I think a great joy is if you enjoy programming a lot, a great joy is talking about it and sharing your experiences with other people. And it's great if you can do that in a more human setting, I want to say, in the widest sense, like either going to a meetup or having, like we're chatting on Hangouts now, and it's pretty great because we can see each other. And I wanted to emulate this feeling where you have like a safe setting for asking questions, talking about the things that you like, geeking out about Python, and doing it in a way where there's, I'm not sure if gated community is the right word because it's a bit of a loaded term, but in essence, that's what it is, right? Where there's a filter up front and there's like someone up front who makes sure that the people in the group agree on some rules, and there are some ground rules, and that we're all treating each other nicely, and that that we're not turning into what some of the public or most public forums are turning into. And for example, like I have been going back and forth and talking about stuff with people who said, "Hey, I'm actually terrified to ask my question on Stack Overflow because I've done that once before." And immediately, like someone either closed my question or said, that's a dumb question that shouldn't even be asked, or like got downvoted or whatever. And the same thing happened on Reddit. It can certainly happen on Hacker News because it can be a little bit of a toxic community there. And so what Pythonista Café is trying to do is to have this safe setting and this more human-like community where most people are signed up there with their real name. They have a photo in there, and it's a private community where we keep jerks at bay that way. So there's an application process, and you have to tell us a little bit about yourself, why you want to join, why you think you could benefit from Pythonista Café, and there's also a membership fee. And this might not be right for everyone, but so far it's been a really, really great experience. We have we have more than 90 members in Pythonista Café. I'm in there every day, answering questions, chatting with people. And we just recently had our first online live meetup. And I met some of them at PyCon. And it was just a surreal experience. I think the model is working really well. I think there's a definite end to how much this can grow, because eventually, if you have too many people, it gets more anonymous. But I think where we are right now, it really hits the sweet spot between, I guess having one-on-one conversations with someone and posting on a public forum where someone might just shoot you down. I think it hits a really nice sweet spot where you can chat about the stuff that you love and ask the questions that you like when it comes to Python. So it's all 100% Python. And people are nice and supportive to each other. And there's no dumb question, because it turns out behind every seemingly dumb question, there's usually a real interesting thought process behind it. And I actually learned a lot from either trying to explain stuff or learning from some other people who are in there and who are more experienced. So it's I think it's a pretty cool setup. I mean, obviously, I'm biased because I started it and kind of got the initial group together, but so far it's been very cool, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. About that at pythonistacafe.com if you're interested.
Yeah, that's really cool. I will check it out. But in order to continue here, I will stop questions related to technology. And I would like to know what you like to do while you are not writing a great book, creating great courses, and releasing great videos. In other words, what do you like to do while not in front of the PC? Or do you have a hobby that you like to do?
I record videos. No, like honestly, it's been pretty tough for me. Like I've been very, very focused on work for, I would say, like the last 12 months. But obviously you gotta see and have some balance, right? Otherwise you're going crazy. Like especially if you're working for yourself, it's like, well, you're sitting there talking into a camera, like maybe chatting with people over Hangouts. Like you got to make sure you leave the house and like, you know, do something in the real world, because it's really easy to kind of, I guess like get stuck into a weird mindset. So what I really enjoy, like I go to the gym, so I do I do a bunch of weightlifting, and that is really something. I know it has like a really good, I guess like a physical effect, but also on just how my thought process works. So like it really clears up all the thoughts and like the random stuff that's just going on. Like it's really like helps me focus. And so I like to do that. I try to do that twice a week. Like recently couldn't really go because of an injury, but now I'm gearing up again. And then my wife and I, we hike a bunch. She's definitely more motivated to hike than I am, I think, because she's just crazy fast on her little legs. No, like we have a lot of time. Like we have a good time hiking around. We do some camping, I guess like outback camping, and it's that's something that I enjoy. And I also recently bought a Nintendo Switch, so I got into gaming again, and that's been not good on my productivity, I guess, but it's a freaking awesome console. Like I love playing the new Zelda, and it's like 20 games in one. So yeah, don't do that. Don't buy the Nintendo Switch. Buy Python courses instead.
That's pretty cool. That's a time sink right there. I stopped playing video games when I got married and kids, because it's a huge time sink right there, right? Sitting in front of a console playing all the time. All right, so I guess this is probably a good time for me to remind everyone who's either listening in or following along on YouTube right now that we have a pretty cool giveaway. Thanks to Dan, we actually will be giving out 3 copies of his ebook, Python Tricks. All you have to do is go to a Google form. We'll post a link to this form on the show notes, so it'll be easier for you to find. All you have to do is click this form, answer a very simple question, and next Wednesday, the 28th of June, we'll randomly pick 3 winners, and you get a nice little copy. So once again, for those on YouTube following us right now, here's the link where you can go. If you haven't already done so, please answer a very simple question. Don't worry, we're not going to share information with anyone at all. And, really nice, easy way for you to get a copy. And I guess now it's a good time for us to do the one segment that we tried to do for every single episode. It is called Top 5. For those who are not familiar with Top 5, it is basically our way to find out a little bit more about our guests in terms of what kind of music do they listen to, what kind of movies or kind of books they are into. And this is not a popularity contest, so don't worry, Dan, we're not really looking to see if you're listening to the very latest hits out there. We're just interested to know what kind of books would you recommend if someone were to really get to know who's the real Dan, right? What book would you recommend? What music? What's the soundtrack of your life, if you will? And to get things started, I will start by asking you to give us a little glimpse into the real Dan by telling us about books that you like to recommend people to read. Doesn't have to be technical only. It could be anything. And it's called Top 5, but 3 would do, 2 would do.
Okay, sounds good. So I gave this some thought. So let me just pull up my list here so I don't miss out on anything. So you wanted to start with books, right? So I really enjoy reading sci-fi, and there's one, I guess, like book that I would recommend. It's called Rendezvous with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke, and that's probably my favorite like sci-fi book of all time. Like it's just an amazing book where it's about like exploring this alien artifact that just came out of nowhere and no one knows what it does, and it's like this sealed world essentially. And anyway, I don't want to spoil the book, but I just loved that book, and I've read it several times, and I really, really enjoy that book. Another book that I really like is The Stand by Stephen King. I think Stephen King is a fantastic writer, like a really human writer, and like really someone, I don't know, that just connects with you and like paints these pictures that are so vivid. And I just really love the guy. He has a great book on writing also, and his kind of methodology and like how he writes, how he structures his day. It's called I think it's called On Writing by Stephen King. Like certainly if you search for writing Stephen King, you're going to find that book. It's a great book too. And then there's one, like if people are into sci-fi, so there's one book that I read maybe it was last year already, but I really loved it. It's called Permutation City by Greg Egan. And this book is like the perfect blend of computer science, sci-fi, and philosophy. And again, it's very hard to talk about this book without spoiling everything. But part of it is like how in the future people are playing this the simulation game that is essentially about trying to recreate simulated life from like a quantum physics level, and like the simulation, like the simulator works at that level, and then people start building stuff, like you build atoms and you build like, I don't know, these like all the building blocks until hopefully one day like the goal would be to have like sentient life, and then it just goes like crazy from there. So amazing book, like highly recommended, Permutation City by Greg Egan. I also like Vonnegut. Like I think he's a great writer. Pretty much everything he ever wrote is great. Cat's Cradle is probably my favorite. And in terms of programming books, I think there are two books that everyone should read, or maybe like there's one book that every programmer should read. It's not a Python book, but the book is called Clean Code by Uncle Bob Martin. And it's a fantastic book. Like it uses Java for its examples, but I feel like 80 or 90% of the examples apply to any programming language, and certainly to the ones that support OOP. And I would highly recommend that book. Like this one of my favorite like programming books of all time. And he also wrote a book called Clean Coder that is more about bits and I guess the productivity mindset that you should adopt as a programmer. I would also highly recommend that book. Like it's a really, I don't know, really like the writing style and like the way Uncle Bob is thinking. So yeah, I'd highly recommend these books.
Yeah. So what about movies or TV series? What are you watching those days?
Right. So I'm a huge Simpsons fan, and I don't really like the new seasons at all, man. They're terrible. But up until, I guess, season 11 or so, it was just pure gold. And so I, sometimes still go back and like watch the old Simpsons episodes because, yeah, I grew up with them and Star Trek, TNG. And that stuff just never gets old. Like that's just evergreen stuff that I can keep rewatching that. And so I guess, yeah, that's not really a movie, but so I have, a couple of choices there. So I think Spinal Tap, this like fake documentary about a British rock band, like a hair metal band, is awesome, like super funny, and it's just a really crazy movie. I really love that movie, watch it several times and try and like get everyone in front of it. Not like most people don't like it, I think, but it's a great movie. And there's a documentary I really like. It's called Jiro Dreams of Sushi, and it's about this 85-year-old Japanese sushi master who runs a restaurant in I believe in Tokyo, and he this guy like spent his whole life, like since he was, I don't know, 14 or maybe younger than that, becoming a master at like preparing sushi. And now, he runs his restaurant, but he still like actively works in the restaurant. Like he's the chef there. And I see a lot of parallels between that and my perspective on programming, because I think it's a wide field again, where at some point you would think, okay, there's only so many ways you can cut sushi, but it's about the whole process. How can he keep going for like 70 years, and keep doing that without going crazy? And how can he get better? And how can he, perfect all these steps? And what's his thinking there? And it's just an amazing movie. Like I was sitting there, like honestly, like almost crying, because I was like, man, this is just so, like, seeing this person's dedication, to their craft and doing this for so long. Just an amazing movie. Like, highly recommended. Jiro Dreams of Sushi. Recent movie, sci-fi movie that I would recommend is Ex Machina. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch it. Like, it's got an awesome soundtrack, like great visuals. I like the story, and it's hard to find like decent sci-fi movies, I feel like, and it's awesome. It doesn't have Tom Cruise in it, so double thumbs up.
All right. So we have a Spotify playlist. So since I'm going to ask you about music, you can choose a couple, maybe 1 to 3 musics that you want to be included on our list. So what do you like to listen while you are doing stuff, or maybe chilling out? So let us know, and also please let me know which are the musics that you want to be included on our playlist on Spotify.
Oh, cool! So there's a playlist with like past guests and stuff. That's really nice. So I really like Radiohead, the British band, and definitely one of my favorite bands. Like I usually don't listen to music when I work, because I can't really concentrate. And I started making it, like, I can't really do that and write at the same time, especially if stuff has lyrics and stuff. So I put that on when I go for a walk or just try and relax. And there's some like really, really awesome songs by Radiohead that I like. Favorite album would probably be Amnesiac, like some of the older Radiohead stuff. The other band that I really enjoy is Pink Floyd, and again, like more of the older albums. Probably Animals would be my favorite album. Like, it's got some like just crazy like guitar solos by David Gilmour, their guitarist. And it's just a crazy band, like, thinking about all the crazy stuff they did and like how they made movies and stuff. And it's, I like, reading about their history as well, because it's just completely nuts. Like that whole era of that like psychedelic rock is, I don't know, there's something about it is really cool, I think. And so Pink Floyd. And then I have very fond memories, if I can do one more, of a specific Beatles compilation, because I remember, getting I got this, as a kid, I got this portable CD player for my birthday or Christmas, I don't remember. And, I was wearing it around my neck, like the complete, like, little geek that I was, with the giant headphones and just walking around. And like, of course it didn't have like the buffering, like the newer ones. So it would like skip, like with every step you make, it would skip, and it would eat like batteries like crazy. And it was just like a horrible, horrible CD player. But I was listening, the only CD I had was the Beatles Past Masters Volume 2 album, I think. And, this just ingrained into my head. Like every time I listen to that, it takes me back, 25 years or whenever that was, or like longer than that probably. And the Beatles made some great music too. So yeah, is that enough, or do you need more?
That's enough. And good selection, by the way.
Thank you.
Very cool. Actually, I was talking to my kids about how the Beatles are still relevant even after all these years, right? It's amazing how the Beatles are just classics, and I guess will never go away. I do have a question for you, Dan, from the chat. So Jessica Temporal, she's asking, what advice would you give to a developer out there trying to find a good life balance? I guess, balancing work and life, personal life, I guess.
Don't start a training business. No. I think that's a super hard question, right? Because I think certainly I think many of the great developers that I've met and that I worked with, they had showed a lot of dedication for their craft and, trying to get better. And those were the people who would, well, maybe spend like a Sunday working on their open source project or trying to get, better, like reading a bunch of books. And it is very easy, I think, to get to the point where it's very hard to have a good life balance. Like my take on life balance is like, I think I'm more aiming, like for my personal life, I'm more aiming towards building a life where I can, enjoy my craft, and where I don't work in a way that I hate work and that I don't enjoy it. Right. It's easy to be like romanticize like, what was going on like 200 years ago or something. But like, I like to think of it as like, you want to be sort of the blacksmith that runs a shop. Maybe they run it from their home, but it's kind of like, okay, so this is going to be a horrible analogy, but I'm just going to go through with it, and then people can think what they want. But like, essentially, it's like, it can be very tough to find like a clear divide. And I don't think it's actually necessary or even healthy to have that complete divide. Like if you love this stuff, like, I mean, I love working on open source stuff, and it's my job and it's my hobby to get better at programming and to learn about programming, to help people get better at programming and to program stuff. I freaking love it. So if you do love it, then, then do it. Like if it gives you joy and you still, your partner is okay with that, or if you have the time maybe to look for a partner, if you want that, and if you have time to, occasionally like hang out with other people, and if you feel good, then I think you're there. But it's not, I don't believe in this like, oh, we all got to do like 9 to 5. And then after, 5 p.m. we go to yoga class and then do XYZ. Like, I don't believe in that model of work-life balance. And I guess that didn't really answer the question either, but it's definitely a danger. But it's okay. I think it's okay to like really nerd out on some of this stuff for a portion. Like, there are phases in your life where that's just totally okay. And it's going to push you farther, and it's going to put you ahead of everyone who doesn't do that. And if you think it's worth it, like everything is a trade-off, right? Like, I mean, like I spent a lot of time in the last year just in a tiny, tiny office with no window, just like cranking out content and creating stuff and doing programming for clients. And it was worth it to me because I see how I can transform my life into what I really want to do and where I can have more of that balance. So, if like, I think this is just a moving target work-life balance, I think. And it certainly changes when people have kids and stuff. I don't have kids. I would love to have a dog, but it's not really possible right now. But I think that really changes someone's perspective too. But I don't think there's a clear like hack of like, oh, you got to do this, or you got to do that. Like if you feel good, then I think you're in the right spot. If you don't feel good, then, look into, maybe you need like an extra hobby. Maybe you need, I think what really helps is like working out and meditating. So like I meditate every day, then I journal for 500 words, and I try to work out twice a month. And that really helps me just, make sure like I have like a minimum sort of balance there. But it'll very specifically depend on each person.
Great answer and great advice too. Thank you very much for answering that. Well, we sadly have come to the end of another episode. So I'd like to thank you, Dan, for being such a good sport, for answering all of our questions. It has been a great pleasure to meet you in person, and in a way that really get to know you at an intimate level. So we'd like to give you an opportunity now for any final remarks you may want to share with our listeners, or if you want to make a quick plug about your books and projects, now's a good time.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. It's been a really cool experience. Like this is the first time I've ever been on a podcast, and it's been great. I got to talk about stuff that I care about for an hour, and everyone had to listen to me. That's awesome. No, seriously, thanks. It's been a really great experience. Yeah. I guess what I want to say is if you liked some of what I said and you would like to learn Python with me, then check out what I've got on offer either at dbater.org, or if you just type Dan Bater Python into Google, that's going to be the first or second hit for that. I hope it's the first. And check out my Twitter feed, check out my YouTube channel, check out my website. There's a bunch of free stuff that you can just enjoy and learn something from it. If you think it's helpful, then you're just welcome to follow along and learn more. And we're going to learn more together. And if you enjoy, if you want to go beyond that and you maybe check out my book, then I'd be very happy. But obviously, you don't have to do that. So yeah, see if you like it. If you do like it, then drop me a line or buy one of my books. That would be awesome.
Cool. Thank you, then. It was a very nice episode. And obviously, we wanted to ask many more questions, but we do not have time for that. So I would like to thank you. And I would like to thank all the listeners and all the people which put questions on our chat. Helps a lot. And today we got very, very much people participating and asking questions, and that's very amazing. I would like to remind that we are going to translate this episode to Portuguese and put some subtitles here. So if you can help us, just click on YouTube, community button, and add subtitles, and help us to add subtitles in Portuguese or even in another language to this episode. And also don't forget to subscribe on our channel and our podcast. Castálio.info is the website. There you can find our feed for iTunes or another podcast program you use. And also check out our agenda. There is our schedule on the website with all our next episodes, and that's it. See you next Wednesday, and we are going to give 3 copies of Dan's book. So don't lose the next episode next Wednesday. And bye. See you guys.
Ain't gonna give nobody none of my jelly rolls. I wouldn't give you a piece of this cake to save your soul. Come on, man. My mom told me today, before she went away, to be a good boy, she'd bring me a toy. I'm my mama's pride and joy. Now there ain't no use for you to keep on hanging round. I love you, but I've got to let you down.